Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on the Spirit of Liberty. The few of you that are right now, I've noticed that my video is not showing up in subscriptions. So you've got to look for it on purpose or click on a link somewhere that has it because it's not showing up in subscriptions. So apparently, because of the subject matter, YouTube is not putting it out there. I guess I'm not qualified to speak on this subject according to them. But either way, it'll get out there eventually. And make sure you help like and share this and get it out there anyway. I don't know why it's not showing up in subscriptions. Could be a fluke, but I kind of doubt it. So either way, I'm going to talk about this subject. And just so YouTube knows, I think misogyny is bad. I think it's actually a really bad thing. And I think all the misogynists out there are terrible people and should go jump in a lake. And let me know if the audio is good. I think I turned the microphone up for something else I was doing. If it's too loud, say something in the chat so I can turn it down a little bit. I don't want to blast everybody or get any static or anything. So let me know if there's a problem there. But again, thank you for joining me. Just an FYI, I will not be here the next 2 weeks. I will be out of the country and in the land of Israel. And really excited about that. Be praying for that trip. Pray that everything goes well over there. And be praying for Brother Paul. He's going to be going over there in just a few days. But pray that it will be a good, profitable trip. And that won't have any hiccups along the way. And everything will go smoothly. But anyway, let's go ahead and get right into this subject of misogyny. We hear that word quite a bit today. And the definition of the word misogyny, it means dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women. And I think, according to that definition, I would definitely say misogyny is a very bad thing. I don't think you should have a hatred, dislike, or contempt for women. Women are something that God made just as He made man. And God actually made woman for the man, and they are a very special creature that I'm very thankful for. They are a special creature that the world would not be able to go on if it were not for women. In fact, you have to have men and women in order to go on. And so I'm very thankful for them. I'm thankful for all the women in my life. I've got a lot of sisters. I've got a mom, of course. I've got a wife and a whole bunch of daughters. Very thankful for all of them. And I do think, though, that there are people out there that are true misogynists, and I think that it is a very bad thing. But at the same time, we hear that word a lot today, and a lot of times when you hear people using that word, you might feel like, well, it kind of sounds like they're talking about me. And they might be. But at the same time, are you a misogynist? Do you have a dislike, contempt, or ingrained prejudice against women? I can tell you right now, I do not. There's no doubt about that. So I went and I Googled the word misogyny. I like to do that sometimes just to see the first things that would come up. I also did a Google image search. I had a feeling it'd be like a picture of Trump or something that was going to come up. But I ended up seeing this picture that I used in the thumbnail. I've seen this picture before, and I'll have it come up on the screen here. Some of you might recognize that. I don't know if you know what that's from, but that is from the 1967 Boston Marathon. And I was reading this article, and I thought this article really illustrates what I want to talk about, because when it comes to a lot of the stuff going on with women, a lot of men like to blame the women for everything. But you know what? I'm talking to the men, and I think everything rises and falls on leadership. And so and in reality, I think it's the men's fault that we are seeing things the way they are. But let's go ahead and read some of this article. It says, Boston, 1967, when marathons were just for men. And it says, the city of Boston is staging its annual marathon. Catherine Schweitzer became the first woman to officially run the race 45 years ago, despite stewards trying to physically force the 20-year-old off the road. Here she recalls how a female runner caused such a fuss. And I'm not going to read the whole article, but right there you'll notice the bald guy in the picture. He's the one trying to push her off. And then I believe this guy pushing him is her boyfriend that went and knocked him out of the way. And she talks all about that in this article. We're not going to go through all of that, but it talks about a lot of just the attitude men had towards women participating in these things. This guy came and grabbed her. He tried to rip off the bib number that she had. But she ended up going on to complete the marathon. And I just want you to notice, though, these last couple sections. It says about 20 miles into the race, I came to the conclusion that when I finished, I was going to try to be a better athlete and try to create opportunities for women so they would experience the same sense of power and strength and freedom that I had. When I crossed the finish line, it was like, wow, I did it. I did my first marathon. It was like, wow, I've got a life plan. And right there, I thought, we've really done a disservice to women when they feel like they've got to do something like running a marathon to have a life plan. We've got a problem in this country when women are celebrated for how far they can run over giving birth to children, over taking care of a house, over being a wife, over doing all the things that God made them for, the things that they can do that men can't do. Okay, first off, a lot of men run marathons, and I noticed the article didn't tell us what place she got, but at the same time, I'm sure she was beat by quite a few men. But either way, men can run a marathon. You know what men can't do? Give birth. You know what men can't do? Nurse a baby. And then not only that, there's a lot of other things that women are just way better than men at, but we rarely see those things celebrated today. We rarely see those things lifted up. I remember back when they came out with the Sacagawea dollar. I remember a lot of women getting mad because it had her carrying a little baby on there. And it made it look like, women are about having kids. And I remember just thinking, that's something very special about women. That's something that they can do that men can't do. But so the truth is, what we were seeing there in that story was supposed to be a story of just how misogynistic men were during that time because they didn't want women competing in male sports and in male race and things like that. But to me, the real sad thing is that she didn't feel like she had a purpose for life greater than running a marathon when there are so many better things. And I believe the reason we have that today, I believe the reason that women feel the need to be men, the reason so many women feel the need to compete with men, whether it be in the corporate world, whether it be in sports, whether it be in the political world, whatever it is because we've done a really bad job as a society and as men to lift up their God-given role. We do not make a big enough deal out of that. We do not celebrate that enough. And so as a result, wicked people have been able to come in and they have successfully made women feel like they are less if all they are doing is what God made them to do. And to me, that's the real misogynist, the one who looks at what the Bible has designed women for and then acts like that's the meaning. A woman that's in submission to her husband, that's the meaning, that there's something wrong with her, that she's not someone to be celebrated. That's true misogyny right there. And, to me, true misogyny is, when you're having men win female beauty pageants, which is the kind of thing we have going on today. Today, misogyny is when you declare a man the most successful contestant on Jeopardy ever. That's that kind of thing, instead of an actual real woman. It's so sad that Woman of the Year, typically these days is a man. That that all these celebrated women are men. It's not right, but it's exactly what we have going on today. And I think one of the reasons this has happened is because of a failure to lift up the role of woman like we should have. I think we ought to hold some of the blame. And so because man has done such a bad job of that over time, and there have been men who throughout history where they have been terrible to women, they have not taken care of their wives, they have not done their job And as a result of that, of men failing in some of the things that God told them to do. As men, we love to complain about all the things that women aren't doing that God called them to do, while at the same time, we as the leaders are not doing the things that God called us to do. Now we can't be surprised when us as the leaders, when we are not doing what God called us to do in our leading, we shouldn't be surprised when those following us don't do what they're supposed to do either. And I'm telling you, I do. I think it's best to lay these things at the men. It's more fun to blame the women, but at the same time, if we're actually looking for solutions, I think it's important that we talk to men. And what we have today, because we haven't given women the honor that they deserve, we have created what I would prefer to call the feminazi movement. I don't even like calling it the feminist movement because, first off, I support all things feminine for women. I think femininity in females is great. I think it should be celebrated. I think it should be lifted up. I think women who are feminine should be praised. I think there's such thing as feminine. I think there's a way to be feminine. I think there's a way to act feminine, to dress feminine. I think it's a real thing that is definable and observable. And I think we should celebrate that kind of thing. But people today who are calling themselves feminists are in reality some of the most, demeaning people of women that you've ever seen in your life. And so we will call them feminazis because I just think that's a more appropriate term, because the feminazi movement too, it's all about just controlling everything. It's all about just pushing more government control in areas. And it's amazing how these feminazis are always talking about how women don't need men, but it's amazing how much they need government. I think that's very interesting, and how whenever they're talking about their oppression of men that's on them, their solution is always government, come save us. Government, come help us. And I think that's interesting that how they do that. So yeah, women, they do fine just independent of men as long as the government's there to take care of them. And the government's not doing a very good job. They haven't made them happier at all. But all the feminazi movement is done. And this is what you have to understand right here. The feminazi movement, okay, it has just promoted a behavior that makes women repulsive. Okay? And sadly, when you have a woman that is not being feminine, it's repulsive. Just as when you have a man who is not being masculine and he is being feminine, it's repulsive. It's an abomination. Being effeminate as a man is a sin. And it is something that is going on a lot today. And people who love women, people who value feminine characteristics and all that kind of thing, they're going to be repulsed by that. So of course we're going to have problems with the feminazis. Of course we're going to have problems with the Hillarys and the Kamalas and people like that, because of the fact that we actually have a value for them. And so that word, misogyny or misogynist, it gets thrown around a lot, but isn't it interesting that the very people who throw that word around all the time, that means a dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women, they can't define what a woman is either. Now think about that. Some of the first people you'll hear out there calling you a misogynist can't even define what a woman is. Well, listen, if you can't define what a woman is, then you can't define misogyny. So what are you doing even saying that word? And yeah, we got North Platte Baptist Church in here. Mother's Day is ignored anymore. Yeah, and you know what? I think that's a very great and honorable thing to celebrate. Thank God for mothers. But you know what? It's confusion these days, because Mother's Day used to be a time too where we talked a lot about women. We celebrated women, but now we got mass confusion because we have people teaching and saying that men can have babies too, which I can't believe I even have to tell you this is not true. Okay. So, so understand, in a world that's promoting the feminazi junk, saying men can have babies and things like that, normal people are going to be repulsed by that. They are going to say negative things towards that movement and the things that they promote, but that in no way makes them a misogynist. Absolutely not, because it's a hatred, disdain for women. And I know a lot of guys that don't like feminazis, myself included. But it's because we actually do like women. So we don't want to we have to make sure that we don't mistake a disgust for feminazis with misogyny. Those are two completely different things. Okay, now just for fun, I want to do this just to have fun. Okay, we're not preaching right now. This is just a live stream that I do to help whoever. So I'm allowed to have some fun right now. But we're going to play a preaching clip. We're going to play a preaching clip of Pastor Tony Hudson, and then this is from Bad Sermons, which, you got to have an appreciation for bad sermons because it is fun watching libs get triggered and cry. And bad preacher clips, it creates a place where all they do is post things that makes libs get triggered and cry, and you can watch them go cry on there. And so I enjoy reading the comments and things on this sometimes. So we're going to play a clip that has them triggered. And some of you might get offended by this at first because you've been so programmed by the news media. But I'm going to defend Pastor Hudson and what he says on this clip here, and then we're going to read the comments because they're pretty funny. So here we go. This Pastor Tony Hudson.
If you boil water long enough, young lady, I know you don't know anything about it. Ma'am, I know you don't know anything about it, but if you boil water long enough, it'll evaporate. There won't be nary water. You'll scorch the pot. The kitchen. I want all the girls, all the teenage girls to say kitchen. Oh, hey, don't y'all blow on me. I want all the teenage girls to on three say kitchen. 1, 2, 3. Kitchen. That ain't all the teenage girls. One more time before I lose it. I want all the women in this building to say kitchen. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they ought to take them out of most homes because you don't use them. Somebody say amen. Make a bonus room out of it.
All right. So hopefully y'all didn't get triggered by that clip. Now, I'm not a Tony Hudson defender, okay? But I had to play that clip because it was funny. People got so offended because he's talking about a kitchen. Now, why is he doing that? Well, because in the feminazi world, they have made being in the kitchen out to be a demeaning thing. And it's not. Okay, women for millennia have been primarily the ones doing the cooking and taking care of things in the kitchen. I can tell you right now, in my family, I would definitely prefer any of the females in the house to be doing things in the kitchen than any of the males in the house. Because, guys, we don't know what we're doing. And if we tried, it's just kind of how we work. It just wouldn't be good. We don't put the love and effort into it like women can. They're better at it. And, it's okay. Ladies, it's not demeaning if you're working in a kitchen. You are feeding your family. Thank God for that. You know how many guys today, if they want to get a decent meal, they're more likely to get one at McDonald's than at home. If you know how to cook and you know how to cook real food, you are very valuable today because there are so many women who have no idea what they are doing in the kitchen. They have no idea what's going on. They do not know what is happening in there. And it's a nightmare what's happening in there. And it's one of the reasons we're so unhealthy in this country. We eat so much fast food, just processed junk, prepackaged junk, because so many women don't know how to cook. And it's more expensive. If you have a wife that knows how to cook, let me tell you, she's saving you a lot of money. I mean, there are so many benefits to that. And so, he's just, letting these girls know, hey, it's okay for you to know how to say this. And you know what? I don't think that's offensive. In part, he's being funny too. Sometimes preachers, they're just being funny, and they're making a point. And so, you know what? If there's some things you could criticize about Tony Hudson that I would not defend, but I'm gonna defend that. I don't have a problem with that. Now, let's go ahead and watch and see what some of the comments were, because this is funny. Now, understand too, on this Bad Sermons, these people that are on here, they many of them claim to be Christian, but understand these people are probably the worst that so-called Christianity has to offer in the world. I mean, these are pretty bad people in here, but it is fun to be able to laugh at them. And so you got one guy on here, Daniel Varney. That man always makes me want to cuss. And then we got this one guy, Stephen Trachian. What type of father brings their daughter to a church to hear that bleep? Why are you why is he so offended by that? He'd be less offended by a drag queen in church than he would by that kind of thing. He's like, that was my first thought. This isn't complementarianism. It's just plain sexist male chauvinism hiding behind a thin veneer of religion. And I love when guys start using these words like this, trying to, just look like they're in touch and, they're not one of these misogynist types. But, complementarianism, that's the, belief that there's, that men and women are equal, but they play different roles. Okay. But how is that not what he's doing? He's just letting women know, yeah, kitchen, that's kind of the female thing. But no, this is sexist male chauvinism. And you know what? Anytime I see a guy, jumping into that type of stuff and foolishness, I have a lot of questions about him. But, can I point out what a sharp dresser Tony is? I mean, the brown shoes with the black suit is a bold choice as he made it. Okay, now when we have a dude on here, getting all fashion, that's always interesting too. You got some short-haired lady on here, so disgusting. This man built his theology around his girth. And then we've got another short-haired woman, little fat male chauvinist. It's funny, if you call a woman fat, you're a misogynist. So what does that mean if you call a man fat? But anyway, Tony hasn't missed any kitchen time for sure. Those teenage girls are obligated to participate in demeaning rhetoric, are the ones who are going to leave as soon as they turn 18. And they wonder why they are losing the next generation. And someone said they aren't losing them. So it's just so funny. It's that same type of foolishness anytime somebody says anything that's not woke. And then you got the bad sermons audience on there. I mean, the worst of the worst in so-called Christianity, and just trying to show how with the times they are, and how bad all those bad old IFB preachers are. But folks, what these people promote is the real misogyny, because they do. When they hear you start associating feminine things with women, they automatically are the ones that think negative things and act like you're demeaning them, as if being feminine, as if doing what God made you to do is a demeaning thing. Okay, who's got the disdain for women? I think when you're doing what God made you to do, that's the best thing you could possibly do. And there's nothing demeaning about that. And a preacher getting up and promoting that, you know what? He's going to make all the ladies feel good who are in the kitchen all the time and that know what they're doing in a kitchen and know how to boil water and all that kind of stuff. I guarantee you, every woman that was in that building that knows how to boil water, they weren't offended at all. But at the same time too, one of the reasons they were probably agreeing and maybe even amening with them too is because they're seeing this generation of women that has no idea what they're doing in a kitchen. And they're bothered by that. And they're disturbed by that. And every grandmother, she's hoping her daughter knows how to make good, healthy food for grandkids so she doesn't have a bunch of, fat, unhealthy grandkids that don't know how to do anything and are, all diabetic and dying of cancer, by the time they're 12. So, these people, they don't realize, these so-called Christians, that all they are doing is just buying into just the woke mob mentality. They talk exactly the way the lost world does. Okay? And understand your average bad sermon audience, or the average bad sermon commentator that's always on there agreeing with them, is not in any way a Christian. And any of them that might be saved are so backslidden and so liberal that it's tough to tell if they are saved or not. They're just that far gone. There's people like me that watch for entertainment. I actually enjoy a lot of the clips, and I do watch it is enjoyable seeing people get triggered. I always appreciate people who share my clips and give me the opportunity to watch people get triggered, because most of their audience doesn't pay attention to me. And so anytime I can trigger all that mob without even making an effort, it's always an encouragement. So anyway, we need to go on to now, because I want to talk about how we can help with this. How we can actually lift up women and actually not be a misogynist. As men, we have to understand there will always be Jezebels, there will always be Hillarys, and it's not their job to lift up women. Okay, I'm not going to wait for Hillary to get her head screwed on straight when it comes to all things feminine. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to wait for Kamala and Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen Page or whatever. I'm not depending on those people. I believe it's up to real leadership. I believe it's up to men to do these kind of thing. And I believe if men, if they would lift up women like they were supposed to, it would become much more popular for women to be like Sarah in the Bible. A lot of men like to talk about that because they'll isolate that verse where she calls him Lord. And then that's what they want and that's what they demand. The problem is you're no Abraham. And so the chances of you getting a Sarah when you're no Abraham is very slim. Okay. And here's the thing, guys. You're probably going to get what you deserve in a woman. So understand that if you're married to like this horror show of a woman that's like a cross between Rosie O'Donnell and Hillary and it, just understand you probably deserve exactly that kind of thing. So if you want to get a good woman, you need to help her to be that good woman. You need to help lift her up instead of dragging her down like a lot of so-called Christian men do, who I think are, the very definition of what a misogynist is. And so you get what you deserve in a wife. And so what are some things that men can do to lift up women? Well, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 5. We're going to a section where men like to read one of the verses, but not all of them. We're going to read a few more verses because we're talking to the men, not the women. But it says in 1 Peter 3, 5, "For after this manner in old time, the holy women also who trusted in God adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well and are not afraid with any amazement. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayer be not hindered." So the first thing that we need to do in order to combat misogyny and to keep from becoming a misogynist is we need to give honor to the women. We need to do that, and not just a verbal lip service. Not just saying, I appreciate women. Okay, we're not politicians where we're just going to go and repeat back what the feminazis are telling us to say. And, we don't want to be like the quote unquote men on bad sermons who are literally on there just barfing puke that someone barfed into their mouth and told them that they needed to say. We're not like them. No, we need to say things that are actually true and right and have substance to them. They're saying these things because a feminazi is twisting their arm and telling them to say it. No, we need to give honor to women because we actually love, care, and appreciate and honor them. And so honor them is not just repeating back the latest feminazi slogans. Okay, honoring women is not, becoming an Eric Skwarczynski, and when you leave the faith, embracing every bit of just feminazi foolishness, bringing on lesbians and egalitarians and all that to let them barf forth their stupidity. That's not what it is. You know what it actually means to give honor. We see notice how it mentions giving honor unto them as unto the weaker vessel. It's recognizing the fact that they are weaker and then helping them and taking care of that. We see in the Bible too, when it talks about the elders that rule well, how they are worthy of double honor, especially that labor in the word. When you have somebody that's laboring in the word, if you appreciate what they're doing, according to the Bible, you're going to give them double honor. Well, a woman, because she is weaker than you, that does not mean you are going to walk all over. It means you're going to honor her. You're going to take care of her. You're going to make sure her needs are provided for, and you're not going to make her life just an absolute nightmare. You're going to understand the fact that, you know what, she's the one who's pregnant for 9 months. She's the one who is going to give birth to those children. She's the one that's going to have to nurse those babies. And she is going to be the primary caretaker for all those things. And those are physically demanding jobs. Those are very difficult jobs. Those are mentally exhausting jobs. Women have hormonal issues. Women have postpartum issues and things that they deal with. And you've got a lot of guys who going around thumping their chest, demanding their wife call them Lord, while they are just running their wives through the ringer. You, my friend, deserve a feminazi. You are not giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel. And you know what? If your wife ever does call you Lord, it's going to be like, because it's like the kid who says uncle to the bully because he's twisting his arm behind his back and he's just trying to make the pain go away. She's not going to say it from the heart. She's not going to mean it. And let's talk about Sarah calling Abraham Lord for a minute. All right, because think about this. First off, Abraham was very wealthy. So they probably lived comfortably for that time. Obviously we probably live even more comfortable now than they did, but for that time he would have lived very comfortably. You know what? Sarah also had a handmaid to help her out. Even before she had kids, she had a handmaid. See, like Rachel and Leah, they had handmaids. Think about it. Your wife has no help. You're so pathetic you won't even pay a babysitter so you can take her out for an evening. I don't believe in babysitters. Well, I guarantee you the handmaid probably helped watch the kids sometimes back then. I guarantee the handmaid probably did a lot of the cleaning and did a lot of the physical labor and stuff. And you know what? They were paying her to do these things. But you, not only are you too poor to do any of that stuff, I mean, you make her live in squalor as it is. You don't provide very well. You give her barely any money to go buy the food, and then you expect her to make good food. You expect her to do all these, you expect her to do so much with so little. And then at the same time, while you have her living in this nightmare prison where you're lazy good for nothing, where when you do come home, you play video games and watch TV while she does all the work, and then you expect her still to call you Lord. Okay? You stink. Why don't you give some honor and actually help take care? Why don't you let her have some things to do? Why can't you let her go do stuff? Let her have a hobby. But no, you think being a real man is handcuffing your wife to the kitchen stove. And I'm sorry, that's not right. Giving honor is recognizing the fact that she is weaker. Now, again, that's going away today because of the fact that we have women like the one who wants to run in the marathon with the men. You got women that want to be in all the men's sports. You got women that want to play football. You got women, they want to do everything that men are doing. They want to join the military. They want to be a cop. Anything men do, they want to do too. And I'm not even saying that there's not a place. Obviously, I think we need women when it comes to the police and things because, you got to deal with a lot of women too. It's probably better if a woman does that to a certain extent. Unless they're getting violent, then you want to bring the men in. But, either way, women do. They have a special place, a unique place. But the thing is, when we are, just advancing this foolishness that women can do everything men can do, then why would we give them any honor? We're seeing chivalry is dying. You don't see men holding the door open for women. You don't see men showing manners and respect. And I'm telling you, it's because of all this feminazi foolishness that's being pushed. And if you act like a woman's weaker or something like that, you're called the chauvinist. You're going to have the wrath of the bad sermons crowd coming down upon you, calling you all these terrible names. And they probably don't know how to define a woman either. So understand, a lot of husbands, they are putting their wives through a lot, physically, mentally, emotionally, not taking into consideration that they are the weaker vessel. And let me tell you, You have no right to do that. Okay? And I get it. You're stronger. That doesn't give you permission and give you just cause to just force your wife and to be abusive with her. No, you give honor. And so because she's the weaker vessel, you know what you do? You are going to talk to her about some things. And while you might feel like certain activities at night, she might not. And you better listen to what she has to say. So I'm the boss. I get that. But you know what? She's the weaker vessel. And so you're going to give her honor. And so you're going to give her some say in a lot of things. And we've got a lot of abusive, ignorant punks out there screaming about their wives, calling them Lord. And, you know, I've heard stories of guys bringing stuff like that up on the first date. That they'll tell this girl, if we get married, I'm going to want you calling me Lord. Let me tell you, I shouldn't say these things because I don't want to ruin things. But let me tell you, some guy said that to my daughter on their first date, second date, third date, whatever. I'm going to tell her, dump the guy right now. Yeah, because, that's going to tell me a lot right there. And I could tell a bunch of stories right now of like a lot of new IFB dating stories. They're pretty funny. There's a reason there's so many single guys, and their prospects aren't looking real good until they start fixing some of these things about themselves. But it's like I hear what some of these guys do on their dates and dates that have gone bad, and just like, are you trying to guarantee that you never get married? But it's very obvious. A lot of men today, they give women zero honor as the weaker vessel. And you know what? Maybe it has something to do with society telling us that women are not weaker. No, women are the weaker vessel. And so as a result, we need to be respectful. It's the same thing too with the elderly. Okay. Nobody thinks that if you have some 90-year-old lady, nobody is going to respect someone who physically dominates her and is abusive towards her and takes advantage of her weakness. You see some guy go and just, rip the purse off an arm of a 90-year-old woman. You're going to be disgusted by that individual. You know why? Because she's a 90-year-old lady. She's obviously weak. Now, that's not being disrespectful. It's not disrespectful to say that elderly people are weaker than younger people. It's just a biological fact, and it's going to happen to all of us. And yeah, you've got some old people that are still pretty strong. But you know what? Most of them are weaker than they were when they are younger. And you know what? Yeah, you got some freakish looking women out there that are pretty strong, but it doesn't change the fact that overall, for the most part, 99 times out of 100, men are stronger than women. So we need to honor them that way, and you should. If you're sitting in the subway and you have a seat and there's an old lady that comes on there, you should give her honor and let her have your seat, punk. You can stand up. Okay? I'm 42 and healthy. I can stand up. If there's a pregnant lady, on the subway, and I've got a seat and she doesn't, I should stand up. You know why? Because I'm going to give her honor, because I'm going to respect the fact that she's a mother, she's pregnant. That's just manners. And we're seeing that kind of thing go away. I've seen some parking lots. Parking lots, they have handicap parking. Some places have senior citizens parking, and sometimes they even have it for expecting mothers. I think that kind of thing is great. I think we should prioritize people like that. You know what we're doing? We are putting the weaker's needs before our own. Why? Because they're weaker. And that is not demeaning. That is not a demeaning thing to say that. But how can we honor that if we're denying the reality of that? But that's where we are in America, and so we wonder why women are getting treated bad. So men, first thing we need to do is we need to honor women and give honor as unto the weaker vessel. And you have got to do that in your marriage, and do whatever you can to help her out, make things easy. You should give her some kind of say, When you're looking for a house, I get it. I get it that you're the boss. A lot of times when there's a disagreement, obviously, the authority has to make the final decision, but you're a fool as a man if you're not going to take into consideration your wife's thoughts on some things. Okay? She's the one you want her to be the keeper of that home. So you ought to let her have some kind of say. If you got a choice between two houses, you ought to listen and take those things into consideration and put her needs above your own. That's all there is to it. So the second thing, the husband is the head of the home, but that does not mean that you cannot let your wife manage the house. 1 Thessalonians 5:14 says, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. Now, all of these things, when you promote that women doing them, you will be accused of being a male chauvinist and demeaning women and all that kind of thing, because you want to have them at home having kids and take care of the house. That's not demeaning to women. That is what God designed. That is God's will. And if you have a problem with that, you're the misogynist. You're the one that has disdain for women. This is what God made them for. This is what they are wired to do. This is what they do best. And when you can't promote that and lift it up, it's because you're the one that has the problem. And so understand, it is the wife's role to guide the house, to manage things. And you know what? And we're going to show some more verses on this in a little bit. Again, a lot of guys who are insecure, a lot of guys who are just punks, and in reality, mentally weak men. They're the ones, it's like they have to micromanage everything. They have to make every decision because they're constantly trying to prove that they're actually in charge. And then they make it impossible for the wife to do what she needs to do. Because they're almost working against her. Listen, your wife, because she's the one that's at home with the kids, because she's the one that prepares the meals, because she's the one that's taking care of all these things in the house, she's going to have a better understanding of what's needed. Okay, I worked in a factory for years, and everybody in the factory always hated it when corporate, when these college graduates who've never worked in a factory were always, making the decisions for our area rather than our management. Because, to these corporate clowns, all we were was numbers on a paper. And so they were like, well, if we could just get these people to do this much more in this area or whatever, it would get the company this much more money. Well, the problem with that is they don't know who those people are. They don't understand what they're doing. They never truly understood what they were asking for. And, managers, they often, because they know the people, because they work with them every day, whenever they would see these new policies come in, they would know this isn't going to work with these people. We're going to have this problem, this problem, this problem. And sadly, corporate would never listen to management. And so they would just kind of force these things on us, and it would never work. And then later, they would get rid of it. It's like, if they'd have just listened to the management, the guys who are actually here every day and working with the people, they would have understood why this isn't going to work. But it's the same thing too, but they're corporate. They're the ones higher up the food chain. They're the ones that have the authority, and they would make the decision, but it always stunk for everybody in the warehouse. And it's the same thing at home. Mom's the one with the kids every day. Mom's the one that knows how they behave at certain times of the day, when it gets close to nap time and when they get hungry and all these different things. But then you have Mr. Insecure Dad who's got to constantly prove he's the boss, and then he's like demanding that she do it this way and do this one thing that way, because he heard somebody on a YouTube video say it should be done this way, where she actually knows what's going to happen if we do that. And you know what, guys, it's okay. Okay, you're still authority. You're still the boss if you just trust her judgment and allow her to manage things and be the keeper of the home that God designed her to be. It's okay for you to do that. And a lot of guys really sabotage things in their marriage, and they make things very difficult for their wives because they refuse to let her actually do her job and manage things. So watch out for that. So another thing too, allow your wife to get proper schooling. And what do you mean by that? I'm not talking about college or something like that. But Titus 2:3 says, the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober and to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Now, all of those things that Paul said, have the aged women teach the younger women to do this, people would say that's demeaning towards women. People would say that's so misogynist. And here it's telling let the aged women teach these things. And sadly, you don't have too many aged women teaching younger women these things today, because a lot of them are buying into the feminazi stuff. Or they're just being, silenced or scared into silence. And even though they know these things that are being pushed are lies, but listen, women, and some women are going to need more of this than others, or from other places. And, in an ideal situation, a young lady is going to get a lot of, if she a good teaching from her mother. But, we live in a world today where people have so few kids. A lot of ladies, when they get married, they've never helped take care of a baby. They didn't have any younger sisters or younger brothers. They didn't observe their mom in what she did. My daughters, they've been blessed to observe my wife do everything that a mother does. And so they're just going to kind of be naturals with a lot of things when it comes to taking care of a house, raising kids, all these things that Titus said to do. Nobody's probably going to ever have to sit down with them and instruct them on these things. There might be some stuff, but you've got a lot of women today, they've not seen this, and maybe they had a feminazi for a mom and they got saved later in life. And that happens. I've seen this too, where young ladies, they get saved and then they decide they want to have a Christian home and they want to do things God's way, but they don't really know how to do it. And let me tell you, they need older women teaching them how to do this kind of thing. And I mean, I heard a preacher one time who was very threatened by my wife, because people in his church must have been listening to her, who was, teaching against this idea of, older women teaching younger women. And he literally went to the verse in 1 Corinthians where it's talking about prophecy and it's giving rules for prophesying and speaking in tongues. And it tells the women to keep silence, for it's not permitted for them to speak. And it says if they will learn anything, and it's not just talking about the subject at hand and what they're dealing with and things in the church. It says if they will learn anything, it says let them ask their husbands at home. And so it was just like, if women want to learn anything, they should ask their husbands. And it's like, okay, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, because first off, when we got married, if my wife had questions, and when she had our first baby, if she had questions about nursing, I wasn't gonna be able to help out with that. When we have women's issues, women's cycle stuff. I mean, there's a ton of, when we got married, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff, and I'm just gonna be honest, I still don't know a whole lot about it. It's not a subject I'm interested in, and it's and you say, well, you should be. You got 6 daughters. That's what I have a wife for. And so when that stuff comes up, that's on the wife. And let me tell you, my wife has never asked me about nursing. My wife has never asked me about all kinds of women's issues and things that they deal with, and hormonal stuff and postpartum depression. You know who women go to for stuff like that? They go to other women, because guys, we have no clue. If my wife starts acting psycho because she's going through postpartum depression or something like that, I'm just going to tell her, just chill out. And then I didn't help anything. And so, I feel so bad for, a lot of young women who are around just bad teaching like that. And, that it's sad if you don't have some older godly women in your life that can help you with these things. And we got to understand that, most people today are not being raised in homes like my home. And so a lot of women are going to need a lot of help with this stuff, which is why my wife does the Gently Led Sisters, and she's helped a lot of women with things that, because they weren't raised right. Women were not lifted up. They've been around all the feminazi stuff, and so allow your wife to get counsel and advice from other women when it comes to these things. It's hard managing a home. It's hard taking care of a lot of kids and dealing with diapers and just cleaning up and all of these things. And I'm just going to tell you, guys aren't very good at this stuff. They're not that good at cleaning. The guys are not as good at nurturing as women are. Guys are not as good when it comes to just helping, taking care of kids when they're sick. There's a reason they all go running to mommy when they're sick and when they're hurt, because moms are better at these things. And let women learn from other women when it comes to these things. And so aged women are supposed to be teaching them, and and sadly, a lot of women they're trying to navigate new territory. And there's nothing more challenging than being a wife and a mother, keep her home, all these things. That is such a challenging job. And then for just some foolish single punk who doesn't know any better but just to blindly follow the ramblings of a lunatic, I feel so sorry for the women who are in churches like that, married to men like that. What an absolute nightmare your home must be. And maybe the reason your pastor has to preach so many sermons against women is because maybe it's not because the women are just so rebellious. Maybe it's just because they're being so poorly treated and taken care of so badly. And, maybe if some guys would get some wisdom, actually be men, actually do things according to the Bible, give honor to their wives, allow their wives to learn from other women, allow wives to manage their homes, let them make some decisions on these things, let them get some good counsel on these things. You know what? They might actually start succeeding. They'll start figuring it out. And my wife's way better at all these things, now than she was when we first got married. Some things maybe with my help, but probably a lot of things without my help. But, so don't be the type of husband, guys, that alienates your wife from all her friends and family. A lot of guys do that, okay? And let me tell you, if I'm hitting you between the eyes with some of this stuff too, I guarantee you one of the problems you have, I'll bet you've alienated yourself from almost all of your family too. And one of the reasons you've felt the need to do that is because you're insecure and your in-laws are bashing you to your wife. And your in-laws shouldn't bash you to your wife, okay? That's not a good thing, but they're doing it out of fear and concern because they know how sorry of a husband you are to her. And they don't believe like we do that marriage is till death do you part. They want her to divorce you because you're such a bad husband, they think she'd be better off starting all over. And that's not true either. But, what would be better off is if you just got your act together and you started doing things right. But anyway, so most men act this way because their in-laws probably and rightfully have a low opinion of them. But if you were secure, if you actually were a good husband, if you actually were taking care of your wife, if you actually were making her happy, then you know what? Your in-laws aren't going to be able to make her hate you. They're not going to be able to make her leave you. She's going to be too busy being happy. And I'm telling you, most parents, they just want their children to be happy. You think that they hate you just because of your stand on the reprobate doctrine or something like that. But no, it's because they feel like you're making their daughter miserable. And you know what? If some guy marries my girl and makes her miserable, I'm going to hate his guts too. So I can't really blame him. But last thing, too, you've got to do as a man, another way we can lift up women, honor women, allow your wife to have certain power over you. Well, 1 Corinthians 7:1, now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Your wife has certain power over you. In other words, she can tell you You aren't allowed to have any other women. She has every right to do that. She has every right to expect you to take care of her. She has every right to expect you to provide for her. And you got some of these guys out there too. They're so pathetic. Not only do they want their wife to be, take care of the kids, keep her home, all these other things too, they make her work a job and make her the provider too at the same time. Why don't you just give up your video games and get a part-time job? Why don't you actually just go produce more? Your wife has every right to expect you and demand that you be a husband and that you do your role. When she married you, it was with you making a vow to keep yourself only unto her as long as you both shall live, to love, honor, and cherish. You said, when she said, I do, it was because you said, I do, to all of these other things. And when you go and you are not doing your role as a husband, when you are not giving honor unto her, when you're not providing for her, doing all of these things, just understand you are out of line. And it is not her being a nag when she just expects you to fulfill your duty as a husband. That is not her being a nag. It is not her being disrespectful. It's not her being unsubmissive. It's none of those things. You agreed to it, Charlie. What's wrong with you? To think that just because you're the man and you're the authority and she's married you, now you can just throw out all those vows that you did. Oh, divorce is bad. Yeah, divorce is bad. You know why? Because you're breaking a vow. But you know what else is equally breaking a vow is you not doing any things in the marriage covenant. So, it's amazing how, we all prioritize like just one aspect of something and we ignore all these other things. And that's not how it works. Okay, in the marriage, there's two people. And men, we're the leaders. Okay, we are the leaders. And yes, feminazis are ruining females. We are to the point now in our society where people can't even define what a female is. But ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to live in that delusion. We can define a female. We know exactly what they are. We know what God created them for. We understand their role and we respect their role. We honor their role. We salute them for their role. And you know what? We're going to do our part too, out of respect for them. And we're going to do our part first because we are the leader. As men, we are the leader and we are going to do our part first. And when it gets difficult, that we're not going to make them lift the heavy end. We're going to lift the heavy end because we're the leader and we're going to do whatever we have to do to make it as easy as possible for them because they are the weaker vessel. Stop putting it all on the woman. Be a real man, be a real leader, and let us not get caught up in this misogyny of our world today where we are putting down the God-given role of women. That is so wrong. There is no reason to do that. Thank God for women who are obedient to the Bible and are a credit to their gender. Let's continue lifting them up. Thank you so much for watching this. We will be back in 3 weeks. Be praying for the trip to Israel. God bless you.